Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Human medic defied orders to save a suffering dragon king. What happened next shocked the galaxy. Planet Cyan was a graveyard of forgotten things. Its skies hung low, choked with swirling clouds of ash, and its surface was a ruin of jagged obsidian cliffs and vast, lifeless plains. No one came here willingly. It was the kind of place where the galaxy discarded what it no longer wanted. Dr. Von Morrow had no intention of staying longer than necessary. His mission was simple: survey the planet's viability for research outposts and catalog any remaining flora. As a xenobiologist and field medic, he had worked on harsher worlds before, but something about Xyron felt wrong. There was a heaviness in the air, a silence too deep to be natural. His ship, the Halcyon, rested on a barren stretch of land as he moved through the canyons, scanning for any sign of life. And then he found it. At first he thought it was just another crumbling rock formation, its jagged peaks reaching toward the storm-ridden sky, but as he stepped closer, his breath caught in his throat. It wasn't a rock, it was alive. A massive form lay among the ruins, barely distinguishable from the landscape, a dragon. Its body was colossal, its wings draped over the cracked earth like shattered glass. Its scales, once brilliant, were now dull and covered in layers of grime, and its breathing was shallow, each exhale a slow, shuddering rasp. Fun froze. He had read about them, the starborn dragons, creatures of legend said to rule the skies of ancient empires, but this wasn't just any dragon. Even in its weakened state, there was something regal about it. His scanner hummed softly as he moved closer, the readings were erratic, and the creature's vitals were dangerously low. Then his eyes landed on the dark growths covering its body, horrid, spined barnacles latched deep into the dragon's flesh, their tendrils pulsing as they fed off its energy. He clenched his jaw. This thing wasn't dying naturally, it was being drained, and the worst part, someone had left it here to rot. He hesitated. This is beyond me. A dragon of this size, of this level of intelligence, should have had an entire empire behind it. Why is it alone? Then the creature moved. A deep, guttural rumble echoed through the canyon as the dragon's eyes, pale silver like a dying star, cracked open. In a voice that shook the very ground, it spoke, "You are not one of them." The voice was raw, broken, and filled with unspoken suffering. Fun felt the vibration through his boots before he processed the words. He stared, for he had never encountered a species of dragon capable of speech before. Even the legends spoke of them as creatures of wisdom, but never ones that spoke in tongues humans could understand. Slowly, carefully, he took a step forward. He cleared his throat, "I'm not here to hurt you." The dragon exhaled sharply, its massive lungs expanding with an effort that seemed agonizing. It turned its head slightly, the movement slow and deliberate, as if it had forgotten how to move. "You wear no crust," the dragon murmured, its gaze studying him. "You do not carry their stench." Fun swallowed. "I don't know who they are." The dragon let out a low, bitter rumble, a sound almost like a laugh but filled with sorrow. "They abandoned me," it said simply. "My own people." A shiver ran down Fun's spine, the weight of that statement settled in his bones. He took another cautious step forward, glancing at his scanner again. The creature was dying. The barnacles had rooted deep, spreading toxins through its bloodstream and feeding off its energy. "Who are you?" he asked softly. The dragon's gaze flickered as if remembering something long buried. "I was once called Bel-Lazar," it murmured, "king of the skies, guardian of the starborn thrones." Fun's pulse spiked, even he knew that name. Every major alien civilization spoke of the great dragon kings, the last of an ancient lineage that had once ruled among the stars, but they were supposed to be long dead, and yet here one lay, rotting, suffering, abandoned. Fun's jaw clenched. No one deserved this. He looked over the barnacles again. He had seen parasitic organisms like these before, creatures that latched onto hosts and drained them slowly, painfully. The barnacles were embedded deep, their tendrils threading through Belazer's flesh like veins of corruption. Then it hit him, this wasn't simply abandonment, it was a curse. Someone had done this on purpose. Bel-Lazar, Fun said carefully, his mind already running through possible treatments, I can help you, but I need to know who did this to you. Belazer's silver eyes darkened. My own council, he rasped, the rulers who once stood at my side. They left me here to die, left their own king to suffer. Rage burned low in Fun's gut, but he pushed it down. Focus, Fun, you're a medic, not a soldier. I don't know what the hell they were thinking, he muttered, stepping closer and pulling supplies from his pack. But if they wanted you dead, they should have done a better job. The dragon's lips curled slightly, the ghost of a smirk buried beneath pain. You are bold, human Bel-Lazar, he murmured, but I fear you do not understand what you are about to involve yourself in. Fun let out a breath and knelt beside the dragon's massive form. Yeah, he said, pulling out his surgical tools. That's usually how it starts. Heart hammering, Bel-Lazar flinched as Fun pressed the scanner against his scales. The dragon's body trembled from the effort of simply staying conscious. The barnacles pulsed grotesquely, their deep tendrils burrowing into his flesh like living parasites, feeding off his lifeblood. Fun had seen infections before, treated warriors with wounds that should have killed them, but this was cruelty crafted with precision. Whoever had done this to Bel-Lazar had known exactly what they were doing. Hold still, Fun murmured as he adjusted the scanner settings. The device hummed, mapping the parasite's invasive network. He frowned as the data loaded. The barnacles weren't just feeding on Belazer's body, they were draining his bioelectric energy, leeching the very force that powered his muscles, his wings, his ability to even lift his head. It was designed to break him slowly, to keep him weak but aware, so that he felt every moment of his own decay. Rage twisted in Fun's gut, hot and sharp. Your own people did this to you, he said, voice tight with disbelief. Bel-Lazar exhaled heavily, the sound rattling through his enormous rib cage. They feared me, he replied, his tone laced with exhaustion. Feared what I would do if I learned the truth of their treachery. Fun worked quickly, cataloging the barnacle clusters along the dragon's spine, throat, and underbelly. The removal wouldn't be easy, each tendril was wrapped tightly around nerve clusters, and any mistake could send a fatal shock through Belazer's system. They wanted you helpless, Fun said, reaching for his medkit, not dead. That means they were planning to come back. A dry, humorless chuckle rumbled in Belazer's throat. Indeed, when my death could serve them best. Fun shook his head. He had seen greed twist men into monsters, but to do this to one's own kin, to let him rot on a forsaken world while parasites devoured him alive, I don't care what kind of war they're trying to start. I'm getting these things off you, Bel-Lazar, he muttered. Belazer's silver eyes flickered with the faintest ember of hope, or perhaps curiosity, behind the exhaustion. You are bold, human, he rumbled. Fun adjusted his gloves and activated the biopulse scalpel strapped to his wrist, a thin, shimmering blade of energy that flickered to life. I'm a medic, he said simply, I fix things. The first cut made Bel-Lazar roar. Fun barely managed to stay upright as the sheer force of the dragon's pained bellow rattled the air, sending shock waves through the canyon. Dust and loose debris shook from the cliffs above, tumbling in sheets of sand and stone. Fun gritted his teeth, this was going to hurt. The barnacle he had targeted was one of the larger ones, latched onto the dragon's ribs. He had used a localized sedative, but the tendrils were so deeply intertwined with Belazer's nervous system that even numbing agents couldn't fully block the pain. The dragon's massive claws dug into the ground, carving deep trenches in the rocky earth, while his tail whipped violently, scattering loose boulders as he fought against the instinct to thrash. Stay with me, Bel-Lazar, Fun said, voice steady yet urgent. You move too much, and I might cut into something important. Bel-Lazar let out a slow, shaky breath, forcing himself still. Fun couldn't tell if it was sheer willpower or the dragon's trust in him, but he didn't waste time wondering and went back to work. The scalpel burned cleanly through the parasite's outer shell, separating it from Belazer's skin. The moment the connection was severed, the barnacle shuddered violently, its spiny surface retracting like a dying creature. Then, to Fun's horror, it lashed out, the exposed tendrils twitched and flailed, sensing their imminent destruction. They tightened around Belazer's nerves, sending a vicious jolt of bioelectric backlash surging through his body. The dragon seized his wings, snapping them outward as a raw snarl of agony tore from his throat. "Damn it, hold on!" Fun barked as he reached for a shock neutralizer from his kit. His fingers moved without hesitation, snapping the device against the barnacle tendrils. The device discharged a controlled electrical pulse, disrupting the barnacle's final attempt to retaliate. The tendrils jerked once and then went still. The barnacle fell away, its dark husk crumbling like burnt stone. "No, Belazar," Fun said, his voice cracking as he surveyed the damage, "this is one down, too many to go. You still with me?" Belazar blinked slowly, his silver eyes dull with pain yet still focused. "Barely," he rumbled. Fun grabbed another sedative from his kit and injected it into the dragon's neck. "I'm not going to lie, this is going to be the worst day of your life," he said grimly. "But when I'm done, you're going to have a lot of payback to dish out." Belazar let out a breath that sounded suspiciously like a laugh despite the exhaustion weighing down his massive body. "Then let us be done with it, and may the stars have mercy on those who did this." Fun nodded and gripped his scalpel once more, the real battle had just begun. Hours blurred together as Fun worked with fierce precision, his hands moving through the thick haze of exhaustion as he cut away the parasites one by one. Each removal was a battle, each barnacle a monster desperately clinging to its dying kingdom. They fought back with vicious bioelectric pulses, sending waves of pain rolling through Belazer's massive body, yet the Dragon King endured. His breathing was labored, his silver eyes flickering with exhaustion, but he never begged for mercy, never once asked Fun to stop. He held still even when his muscles spasmed violently, even when the pain was so raw that his claws shattered the rock beneath him. "Almost there," Fun muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. His fingers trembled, and his shoulders ached from the relentless strain, but he couldn't stop, not when they were this close. Another barnacle came free, its grotesque tendrils curling inward as it died in his hands, another, and another. Then the final one appeared, the largest, coiled deep along the dragon's spine, the central parasite that had anchored itself into Belazer's core nervous system. It was the most dangerous. Fun knew that if he made a mistake here, if the tendrils fired one final pulse before he could sever them, it would kill the Dragon King instantly. Fun's heart pounded, his hands did not shake. With one slow breath and one precise cut, the scalpel sliced cleanly through the parasite's core, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The barnacle convulsed, its tendril snapped, and with a final gurgling shriek, it peeled away from Belazer's back, leaving a trail of scorched flesh in its wake. It hit the ground with a sickening thud, its twisted husk curling in on itself as if it had never belonged to this world at all. And then silence. The energy that had once bound Belazar shattered the invisible chains that had held him captive so long, it broke apart like glass, dissolving into the air with a faint, whispering hiss. The curse was lifted. Fun staggered back, his chest rising and falling in ragged gasps. His hands were slick with blood, Belazer's blood, his own blood, but it didn't matter, because the Dragon King was free. Belazer's massive form collapsed, his body spent, yet his breathing was steady. The pain that had once shackled him in agony was gone, his silver eyes fluttered open, revealing for the first time a glimmer of relief. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, in a voice that rumbled like a distant storm, Belazar said, "You have given me my life back, human." Fun let out a shaky laugh, running a trembling hand through his hair. "Yeah," he muttered, "that's kind of what I do." That night, the storm rolled in. Fun sat beside the massive dragon, his back resting against the curve of Belazer's colossal ribs. The heat from the dragon's body was the only warmth in the frozen darkness of Xyron, where rain pounded the barren earth and carved rivers through the cracked landscape. Belazar had barely moved since Fun finished the procedure, his body was rebuilding itself, recovering from centuries of torment that had nearly killed him. Fun stayed awake, watching over him, perhaps out of exhaustion, or perhaps because of the unspoken connection between them, the understanding that they had just endured something no words could capture. Or maybe, deep down, he was afraid that if he looked away, if he let his guard down, the galaxy would take Bel-Lazar from him again. Then Fun felt the shift before he saw it. The air around them grew thick with energy, charged like the moment before a lightning strike. A low, distant hum thrummed beneath Fun's skin, setting his nerves on edge. The storm itself seemed to bend around them, the rain slowed, the wind hushed to an unnatural stillness, and then Bel-Lazar's silver eyes snapped open. Fun barely had time to react before the dragon moved. The earth shook as Bel-Lazar rose, the sheer force of his presence ignited the air around him. His massive wings stretched wide, illuminated by flashes of lightning streaking across the sky. His once weakened form was now a living tempest, his scales shimmering with raw, untamed energy. He wasn't just awake, he was reborn. Fun slowly climbed to his feet, his heart hammering in his chest. Bel-Lazar, the dragon, turned his gaze downward, and for the first time Fun truly understood whom he had saved, not a dying king, not a forsaken soul, but something greater than legend itself. "You have done what no one else dared to do," Bel-Lazar rumbled, his voice stronger now, deeper, filled with a power that had once been lost to him. "And because of that, the galaxy will never be the same." Fun swallowed, he wasn't sure whether that was a good thing or a very, very bad thing. Before he could respond, the storm split apart, not by wind or lightning, but by the arrival of something else, ships. A fleet descended from the storm-laden sky, their engines glowing like dying embers, their hulls bearing the insignia of the Galactic Council, their banners carrying the mark of those who had betrayed Bel-Lazar. Fun's stomach dropped. They had come not to rescue their king, but to silence him for good. The first ship broke through the storm clouds like a dagger slicing through flesh, then another, then a dozen more. The fleet hovered above the ruined landscape of Xiron, burning through the endless night, their shadows stretching long across the desolate ground. Fun didn't need to check his scanner to know the kind of firepower they carried. The Galactic Council did not send diplomats when they came for unfinished business, they sent executioners, and tonight they had come to finish what they had started. Bel-Lazar stood tall, his massive wings extended against the storm's fury, his silver eyes fixed on the descending ships with cold, calculating silence. Gone was the broken, suffering creature Fun had found dying in the wasteland. Now the Dragon King stood as he once had, a monarch forged in fire and war, his presence alone enough to send tremors through the air. Fun's hand hovered over his sidearm, though he knew it was useless against the forces they faced. His mind raced with options, tactics, escape routes, but there was no running, not this time. A deep, metallic hum filled the air as the largest ship in the fleet descended. Its hull was plated in black and steel, and gold adorned with the sigil of the Zeroth dynasty, the very faction that had betrayed Bel-Lazar. The ship's landing ramp extended, steam venting from its hinges as armored figures emerged, their movements as precise as predators stalking wounded prey. Their leader came last, stepping forward with the slow confidence of a man who believed he had already won. Fun recognized him immediately, Lord Regent Tlor, a tall, skeletal figure wrapped in regal, dark robes. Neither warrior nor politician. Taylor was something far worse, a schemer, a man thriving in the shadows and orchestrating victories before the battlefield was ever set. He had been Bel-Lazar's counselor, his trusted advisor, before leading the coup that left the Dragon King abandoned to die on Xiron. Taylor stopped a few paces away from Bel-Lazar, tilting his head in mock surprise. "Alive?" His voice was smooth and deliberate, as if speaking to an amusing relic rather than a ruler. "Impossible, the barnacle should have drained you to the bone by now." Yet his sharp, inhuman eyes flickered to Fun, a human. Fun felt the weight of 100 unseen calculations running through Korink's mind. "You are either very brave or very foolish, perhaps both," Taylor mused. Fun did not flinch, his muscles coiled, ready for whatever came next. Bel-Lazar's deep, rumbling voice shattered the brittle quiet. I see time has not changed your nature, Kaler. You still wear a coward's skin. Korink's smile never faltered, but for a moment his grip tightened behind his back. Ah, my king, such harsh words, and here I came to offer you peace. Fun almost laughed. Peace. Belazar did not, his wings shifted, the wind snapping around them like the herald of an approaching storm. You came to ensure I was dead, Belazar said, and now you find me standing at your side, as if dealing with a stubborn child. The galaxy has moved on from your reign, Belazar, we built a better future, a cleaner one without you. His gaze flickered to the dragon's gleaming silver scales. Unpredictable factors, Belazar stepped forward slowly, his sheer size dwarfing Korink, yet the Lord Regent did not retreat. That future, the Dragon King, he rumbled, was built on treachery. Korink spread his hands. History will decide. An intensity, thick enough to shatter the planet itself, settled between them. Then Korink's voice softened, laced with almost fatherly patience. Belazar, surrender, and I will grant you mercy. You have my word. Belazar laughed, a deep, rich sound that carried through the storm, sending unease through Korink's soldiers. Your word, the dragon murmured, is worth less than ash. Korink's mask of civility fractured, he exhaled sharply, turning away as though exhausted by the conversation. Then you leave me no choice. With a snap of his fingers, the sky ignited. The fleet opened fire. The first blast tore through the canyon walls, sending shards of obsidian rock flying in all directions. The impact knocked Fun off his feet, heat seared his skin as he scrambled for cover behind a jagged outcrop. Belazar did not move. The Dragon King stood against the firestorm, his massive wings spread as if daring the ships above to strike him down. Plasma rounds seared through the sky, but none touched him, for the very air bent around him. Then, with a roar that split the heavens, Belazar moved. His wings snapped downward as he launched into the air with explosive force. The shock wave of his ascent tore through the battlefield, sending Korink's soldiers stumbling backward. Fun barely had time to breathe before the dragon was upon the fleet. Belazar was no longer the weak, dying creature they had left behind, he was the storm incarnate. He tore through the first ship like a spear through flesh, his claws raking across its hull with enough force to rip the plating apart like paper. The vessel erupted as flames licked the underbelly of the others that desperately tried to reposition, but they were too slow. Belazar was everywhere at once, his silver form weaving through the onslaught of gunfire with a grace that should have been impossible for something so massive. One ship, then another, he ripped them apart, his breath melting steel, his tail tearing engines, his very presence rewriting the sky itself. On the ground, Fun pushed himself up, watching the battle unfold in stunned awe. This wasn't merely survival, it was retribution. A shadow flickered in his peripheral vision. Korink, the Lord Regent, was moving, retreating his personal guards and dragging him toward the safety of his transport. He had no intention of staying to witness his failure. Something inside Fun snapped, his legs carried him before his mind could catch up, and he surged forward, slipping past disoriented soldiers as he cut across the battlefield toward Korink. The Lord Regent turned just as Fun reached him, his smug composure broke. The human tackled him, slamming a fist into his jaw with the force of a man who had spent his life fixing things, only to realize some things were beyond repair. Korink hit the ground, his breath catching as he glared up at Fun. You, he spat, voice full of disgust. Fun grabbed the front of his robes and dragged him closer. You threw him away like he was nothing, he hissed. You let him suffer for centuries. Killer, Korink sneered, but now there was fear in his eyes. You can't stop what's already been set in motion, human, his voice dropped to a near plead. You don't understand what you've done. Fun's grip tightened. Neither do you. Above them, in the burning sky, the Dragon King roared once more. The ground trembled, and the air hummed with residual energy as the sky burned. Ships that had once hovered with untouchable authority were now reduced to flaming wreckage, their debris raining down like dying stars upon the forsaken landscape of Xyron. Smoke curled into the storm, a heavy, acrid sky choking the air with the scent of melted metal and scorched circuitry. Fun held Corinth down by gripping the fabric of his robes. Blood dripped from the corner of Taylor's mouth, where Fun's fist had landed, yet the alien sneered with sharp, contorted features. "You think this changes anything?" Taylor's voice was raw and bitter. "You think saving him, a relic, undoes what we've built?" Fun ignored the words. His breath was ragged, his knuckles ached from where they struck bone, and the adrenaline still pulsed fiercely within him. Deep down, he knew that Corinth was already finished, the war he had so carefully orchestrated was unraveling before his eyes. "You left him to die," Fun murmured, tightening his grip, "you and the rest of your cowardly council." Corinth let out a hollow chuckle, laced with pain. "Of course we did. He was too dangerous, the last king of a dying race clinging to old power, refusing to bow to the new order. We gave him mercy, and yet he crawled back to life." His golden eyes flickered toward the sky where Bel-Lazar was locked in combat with the last of the fleet, his lips curling between fury and fear. Fun followed his gaze. Bel-Lazar soared through the smoke-laced heavens, his massive wings slicing through the storm, his silver scales reflecting the fires below like a celestial wraith reborn. His claws tore through the hull of another warship from the inside, sending it spiraling into the abyss of Xyron's unforgiving terrain. He was not merely surviving, he was making a statement. Fun turned his attention back to Corinth, his voice low and steady. "You don't get to call that mercy. You call it what it is, betrayal." Corinth's expression darkened. "You think you've won, human?" His voice was almost mocking, yet beneath lay something desperate. "The galaxy doesn't need kings anymore, we made sure of that. What do you think happens next? You think they'll let you walk away after this?" Fun did not flinch. He knew the risks and the weight of what they had done, but he also knew that for the first time in centuries, the truth had been set free. He pulled Corinth up, dragging him to his feet. "They're not going to have a choice." Then, with a sudden deafening crack, the air split as a blinding explosion ripped through the sky. The last of the fleet, in a final desperate act, detonated its own command vessel in an attempt to take Bel-Lazar down with them. For a single horrifying second, Fun's breath caught as the explosion consumed the air around the Dragon King. Then, through the smoke and the fire, Bel-Lazar emerged. His wings were tattered yet unbroken, his silver scales, scarred with streaks of flame, still shone as he stood, still alive. As he descended toward the battlefield, the storm parted around him, bending to his presence and sheer will. Taylor stiffened. For the first time, the Lord Regent of the Galactic Council looked afraid.